You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hello, and thanks for joining Revolution 250, where we look at events that took place 250 years ago this week. This is from the American Revolution Podcast, a short bonus episode to remind you about these important anniversaries from the Revolutionary War. This week, we remember the establishment of the Continental Navy and the Continental Marines in the first full week of November 1775. For the Second Continental Congress, events moved pretty quickly. When the body assembled in May 1775, the war had already begun at Lexington a month earlier. Soldiers were already in the field, and another force had captured Fort Ticonderoga in New York. The Congress had initially been assembled to discuss additional trade restrictions against Britain, but everyone at this point was looking at them to run the war. It took months for Congress to get its act together. It established the Continental Army in June and appointed George Washington to command it. Congress also called for the creation of a Continental Navy in October. In both cases, though, Congress was playing catch-up. An army was already in place, besieging Boston and threatening Canada. By the time Congress authorized a navy, Washington had already outfitted several ships that were patrolling the waters off the East Coast. On November 4th, after receiving recommendations from a committee that had just visited the army around Boston, Congress authorized the reestablishment of a permanent army of just over 20,000 officers and men. A big problem for the Continental Army was that most of the soldiers at the siege of Boston, and now those invading Canada, had their enlistments expiring at the end of the year, less than 2 months away. The big issue for the Army was getting soldiers to re-enlist or recruiting new soldiers. Many men who had been at the siege of Boston for nearly 9 months were more than ready to go home, at least for the winter. Keeping an army in the field would prove to be a serious challenge. Congress also began doing more to establish a navy. On November 5th, Congress appointed Esek Hopkins as the Navy's first commander. At the time, Hopkins was serving as a general in the Rhode Island militia, but he had spent much of his pre-war life working as a merchant ship captain and had also commanded a privateer during the French and Indian War. His appointment was probably due in part at least to the fact that his older brother, former Rhode Island Governor Stephen Hopkins, was serving as a delegate to the Continental Congress at the time when that body chose to appoint a commander. Commodore Hopkins took command of the 4 merchant ships that were being converted into warships in Philadelphia. These were the Cabot, the Alfred, the Columbus, and the Andrew Doria. It would be several more months before the Navy was ready to commence its first mission. Around the same time that they created the Navy, Congress also authorized the raising of 2 regiments of Marines to serve on their new naval vessels. On November 10, 1775, Congress passed the authorizing resolution creating the Marines. Congress appointed Captain Samuel Nicholas as the first commander of Marines. The term commandant was not used at the time. Nicholas's father came from a Quaker family. His father, a blacksmith, got kicked out of the Quakers due to his regular drunkenness and died when Samuel was only 7. Unfortunately, his mother's side was a bit more prominent. His uncle, Atwood Shute, was the mayor of Philadelphia and raised the boy when his parents passed. Before the war, Nicholas spent some time sailing for Philadelphia merchant Robert Morris. And despite no military experience, Nicholas got command of the Marines. The likely source of this was Robert Morris, who served on the Marine Committee in the Continental Congress. Nicholas set up recruiting at Tun Tavern in Philadelphia, a waterfront bar popular with the sailors. He soon had 2 battalions of Marines. Because Congress authorized the creation of the Marine Corps on November 10, 1775, the modern-day U.S. Marine Corps recognizes that date as the Corps' birthday. I hope you've enjoyed this Revolution 250 moment. I originally covered the events discussed today in episodes 75 and 84 of the American Revolution podcast. I encourage you to subscribe for free on whatever podcast platform you like to learn more about the American Revolution. Or go to blog.amrevpodcast.com to listen to all of the episodes, to read transcripts, or get source information on all of the episodes. Thanks again for listening to this Revolution 250 moment on the American Revolution podcast.